For the Bills to beat the Jets in week 2, it's all about controlling the game script. I'm going to explain how they can do that today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. You can just move through life, or you can find the things that move you. It's your choice. Mazda, move and be moved. Well, folks, it's time to get ready for the Buffalo Bills Week 2 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them. So let's dive in. The Bills are on the road in Week 2 to face the New York Jets. The game will be played on Sunday, September 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. You can watch the game on CBS. Jim Nantz is on the play-by-play. Tony Romo is your game analyst. Tracy Wolfson is the sideline reporter. This will be the 130th all-time meeting between the Bills and the Jets. The Bills in the previous 129 meetings are 71-58. The Bills have won the last 3 against the Jets and 8 of the last 10. The Bills enter this game 1-0. Of course, 41-40 winners over the Baltimore Ravens. The Jets are 0-1. They fell to the Pittsburgh Steelers 34-32 at home. The head coach, we have a new head coach for the Jets. It's Aaron Glenn, 53 years old. He's entering, of course, his first season as the Jets head coach. They lost their first game, so he's 0-1. Prior to being the head coach of the Jets, he was the Lions defensive coordinator from 2021 through 2024. Then he was the Saints defensive backs coach 2016 through 2020. Then the assistant defensive backs coach for the Browns 2014 through 2015. He was an outstanding former NFL player, a cornerback. 15 years in the NFL, 8 with the Jets, was a first-round pick and a 4-time Pro Bowler. The quarterback for the New York Jets, also new, Justin Fields, 26 years old, was a first-round pick, number 11 overall in 2021 out of Ohio State by the Chicago Bears. And, of course, he spent the first 3 seasons of his career with the Bears, then last season with the Steelers, where he started 6 games. The Steelers went 4-2 in those 6 games, and now he finds himself with the Jets. And they signed him to a 2-year, $40 million contract. It's kind of a rare territory for a quarterback contract. Usually they get paid all the money or their backups. And so this is like your lower middle class contract for a quarterback. I guess your middle class contract is like what Sam Darnold got. This is like your lower middle class contract. And so he's going to have a chance here to be the guy and maybe be the answer for the Jets. He's 6'3", 225 pounds. He's physically gifted. Size and athleticism for days. He's got tons of arm talent. That's the appealing part of Justin Fields, is he's big, he's athletic, he's got a big arm. And at Ohio State, I mean, he was a phenomenal football player. I was a big fan of his. Now, he's not been a super consistent player in the NFL, but he's capable of really doing anything on the field. It's finding consistency that he needs to discover. To this point, he has started 45 career games, and his teams are a very unfortunate 14-31 in those starts. Last week against the Jets, he put up some numbers. Last week against the Steelers, he put up some numbers. 16 of 22, 217 passing yards with a passing touchdown, no interceptions, ran the ball 12 times for 48 yards, and added 2 rushing touchdowns. Now, diving into his metrics, and we're going to get into metrics every week for the opposing quarterback. And I'm going to give you league ranks. And when I give you league ranks, I mean of the 32 quarterbacks in the NFL that are starters. So that's where he'll rank 1 through 32. Last week, in terms of EPA per dropback, this was the number one quarterback in the NFL. He threw deep 4.5% of the time. That was 27th in the NFL. The deep ball was not a big part of what the Jets were able to get done. He did hit a big throw down the field to Garrett Wilson, but overall, not a big part of what was on the menu for the Jets. Yards after catch, didn't get a ton of production there. Only 34% of his yards after the catch. That's 28th in the NFL. Justin Fields threw to his first read only 50% of the time. That's dead last. And so, he's not the type of quarterback that's always going to color within the lines, right? He's going to survey the field. He's going to take his time. In fact, last week, slowest trigger in the NFL, 3.27 seconds. And he's a quarterback that's been sacked a ton in his career. Over 11% of his dropbacks for his career have resulted in a sack. So not a lot of first read. Takes a long time to throw the football and gets sacked a ton. Now, he only got sacked one time last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that's important. We're going to talk about that because I mentioned in the cold open that I think dictating the game script is going to matter a ton here. And that's not what Pittsburgh was able to do. And that game was a lot closer than I think a lot of people expected it to be. And I think that's because the Jets were kind of in control and had a 2-score lead in the second half. And that allowed the Jets to remain two-dimensional on offense. And that limited the Steelers and the outstanding pass rush that they have. And so game script's going to matter a ton here, which we will continue to consider as we continue this preview. Continuing with Justin Fields' metrics, his catchable ball rate was 77%. That's 20th in the league. His off-target throw was only 4.5%. That's number one. So he did a good job of giving his guys chances to catch the football. Did not have a turnover-worthy throw. They did not have a drop last week. Now, he was pressured a ton, 44% pressure rate on dropbacks. That's sixth highest of any quarterback in the NFL. And 9.1% of pressure resulted in a sack. That was actually top 10, number 9 last week. They ran play action 24% of the time. That's 15th in terms of frequency. And they didn't really get the screen game going. Only 4% of throws were screens. That's 29th in the NFL. So Justin Fields, high variance player, dynamic playmaking upside. He just has not been very consistent. And so we'll see what he looks like in week 2. Obviously, a good story to tell for the most part as it relates to week 1. Obviously, they didn't get the win, but you really don't look at Justin Fields as a leading reason why they weren't able to get a win in week 1. All right, coming up next, we're going to dive further into this Jets offense outside of Justin Fields and give you the Bills' defensive keys on Sunday. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. You can just move through life, or you can find the things that move you. It's your choice. You can choose to get out there, choose your people. You can choose to go for it, like really go for it. Just choose to do something that moves you. Mazda crafts cars for those who choose to do more than simply move. Mazda, move and be moved. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Buffalo Bills, Josh Allen delivered in a big way. Unreal performance, especially in the fourth quarter against the Baltimore Ravens. And when the pressure was on, Allen came through, no hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Josh Allen is on a streak. And just like Josh Allen delivered for the Buffalo Bills, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday that you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November the 18th. Welcome back, folks. Let's continue to break down this Jets offense that is coordinated by Tanner Engstrand, 43 years old. It's his first season with the Jets. He spent the last 5 years with the Detroit Lions, the last 3 of those years as their passing game coordinator. Prior to his stint with the Jets, was in the XFL and was the longtime offensive coordinator for the University of San Diego, more than 10 years on the job there at the University of San Diego. So last week, the Jets scored 32 points. That's the fifth most of any team in the NFL. They passed the ball on 37% of snaps. They ran the ball on 63% of snaps. That's the highest run rate, the lowest pass rate. This is real simple. The Jets want to run the football, which is really not a surprise if you know anything about Aaron Glenn, Tanner Engstrand, the makeup of this offense. They're going to want to run the ball. They had a lot of success. They were fifth in EPA per play offensively, second in EPA per pass, 10th in EPA per rush. They converted 50% of their third downs. That was eighth best in the league. And they were 3 for 4 scoring touchdowns in the red zone, 75%, seventh best in the NFL. Let's talk about their personnel. A wide receiver, the guy. And to me, their best player offensively is Garrett Wilson at wide receiver. I think the world of Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson is the closest thing to prime Stephon Diggs that I've seen. You know, he's not the biggest receiver, but he's quick. He has speed. He's a really dynamic route runner, creates great separation, has good hands, good ball skills, good body control. He's a true number one. He's awesome. And he's a player that has given Christian Benford some challenges. I don't think I've seen many receivers really challenge Christian Benford. Garrett Wilson's a guy that can do that. So that's the guy to deal with. That's the number one player that I think you got to focus in on when it comes to the Jets skill players in general. His running mates, now that's where they really have a drop-off. There's just not much here in terms of depth of weapons. It's Josh Reynolds, who's kind of like your classic fourth receiver in the NFL, size, ball skills, not super dynamic. You know, he missed the practice on Thursday. Maybe he's not going to be available. If he can't go, I'd assume it's Allen Lazard, who I've always kind of compared to as like Gabe Davis type player. He was inactive as a healthy scratch last week for the Jets. He would step into this role. Tyler Johnson is their slot receiver. Tyler Johnson was a really likable player in college at Minnesota. Pretty good route runner, firm hands, like good play strength and ability to sustain himself at the catch point. But he's really bounced around and has not really produced meaningfully in the NFL. So I think the idea of Tyler Johnson's been a lot better than what Tyler Johnson's proven to be. But he's the guy that I think can make a frustrating catch against you that you're like, who's that guy and how did he make that play? And then, you know, for the most part, he'll be quiet otherwise. But you can't really sleep on him. He's got really good hands. That's one thing that stands out to me about Tyler Johnson. So probably going to get Garrett Wilson, Tyler Johnson, and Allen Lazard. If Josh Reynolds can go, I don't think you'll see Allen Lazard. At tight end, Mason Taylor, their second-round pick out of LSU. I think he's got a bright future. I really like the receiving upside that he has at his disposal, but it's a second career game, and he was pretty quiet in his debut. His running mate at tight end is Jeremy Ruckert, fourth-year player out of Ohio State. Think your classic backup tight end, not really dynamic in any one area, but can just do everything well enough to get on the field. So Mason Taylor, Jeremy Ruckert, your tight end situation. The running backs, Breece Hall's the main guy. Contract year for him, and he was really dynamic in week 1 against Pittsburgh, highly productive. And you could tell he's out there to try to prove to the Jets that, you know, he can be their guy. And obviously this regime didn't draft him, so he's got a lot to prove. And he's had a couple of quiet years after a hot start to his career. And so he's off to a good start. And he's got a lot of speed, and he can catch the football, and, you know, potentially a very explosive playmaker for them. Braylon Allen is his running mate, second-year player out of Wisconsin, big physical downhill runner. And then we'll see they might get Isaiah Davis going as well. He's 6'1", 220 out of San Diego State. When it comes to their carry distribution last week, Breece Hall had 19 carries. Justin Fields had 12. Braylon Allen had 6, and Isaiah Davis had 2. So it's about Breece Hall and Justin Fields when it comes to stopping this team from running the football. Braylon Allen, I think, will get some short yardage opportunities, but it's Hall and Fields. When it comes to target distribution, Garrett Wilson got 8 targets, Josh Reynolds 3. Then you had 2 for Tyler Johnson, Breece Hall, and Jeremy Ruckert, and 1 for Mason Taylor. That's it. So it's a pretty defined situation here. Obviously, the dual threat nature of Justin Fields, Breece Hall as a multifaceted back, and Garrett Wilson, right? So not a lot of depth here, but a defined situation and some potency with a couple of these options. Let's talk about this offensive line. Left tackle is Olu Fashanu, high pick a couple of years ago. And I thought he was kind of shaky in week 1 against Pittsburgh. And I think the Bills will have some opportunities to test him. Their left guard is John Simpson, longtime veteran starting left guard in the NFL, sufficient level starter. Their center is Josh Myers, who I think the last 4 years he was the starting center for the Packers. And, of course, they had the injury to Elijah Vera Tucker that forced them to shuffle some things with their offensive line. But the guy that steps in is Josh Myers. And that's a lot of experience to be able to step into your lineup. And so they were fortunate to have him as a reserve, who's really a guy that's been a starter for the last 4 years. Their right guard is Joe Tippmann, who was their scheduled center. That's part of their shift here with Elijah Vera Tucker out. Tippmann goes from center to guard, and then Myers goes to center. I think Joe Tippmann's one of the bright young interior offensive linemen in the NFL. I think very highly of him. I think he's going to be a very outstanding long-term starter, and he's already kind of become a quality starter type player. Then their right tackle is Armand Membu, their first-round pick, a top 10 pick. I thought he was the best tackle in this coming class. I really like him a ton. Physical, powerful run blocker, and I think he's got good technique as a pass rusher. Excuse me, as a pass blocker. He had his hands full with TJ Watt. They helped him quite a bit in week 1. And I'll kind of be curious to see how they address the depth of the Bills pass rushers this week. But good looking young player, but still a guy in his second career start. So what are my keys for the Bills defense against this offense? And obviously the Bills defense under the microscope after what we saw against Baltimore. Number 1, I have down correct yourself. And you've heard me talk all week long about what I saw with this Bills defense against Baltimore. And I think ultimately it comes down to more of an appetite to be physical and play downhill on the second level. Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano, and I'll extend that to Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop. Those guys have to meet this moment, and they should. They should be very excited about this opportunity to go up against a team that has a dual-threat quarterback that's going to want to run the football. And you have a chance as a competitor to correct that and get back out there and be tested in similar ways. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like the Jets are as good as the Ravens, but conceptually, the type of offense they want to be, I think, is similar. Go meet this moment. I mean, you got some stink on you from last week. If you're 8, 58, 9, and 24, you got some stink on you. Get it off. Go play this game. Show that appetite to be physical, because that was the biggest problem. They didn't want it. They didn't want it last week. Too passive. Can't do that in this league. This Jets offensive line will get off the ball to get after people. I'm not worried about the defensive line so much. We'll see what happens with that Oliver. But the linebackers and safeties have got to be more assertive in how they play this football game. Correct yourself. Get it right. Meet the moment. Number 2 is to dare Justin Fields to beat you throwing the football. Now, part of that's going to be game script dependent. The Bills offense is going to have to score points. I think they will. But ultimately, there's not a lot of depth with the playmakers here. And we know that they want to run the ball. Like, I'm sure if it goes the way the Jets want it to, they will run the ball between 70 and 80% of the snaps. Don't let them do it. Get a lead and dare Justin Fields to throw the football and beat you as a drop back passer. Now, again, a lot of that is going to be on the offense to score points and put them in that spot. But from a defensive perspective, even in neutral game scripts, when it's tied or it's a 1-score game, give the more appealing look to the Jets offense to throw it. They're going to be a much better running team than a throwing team. Invite them to throw the football. And don't allow them to have momentum pounding the rock, because that's what they did against Pittsburgh. They had an explosive run early in like the first play of the game. They established that ability to run the football, and they believed in it, and they had momentum, and you could see the offensive line was firing off the ball. Don't give them that. Don't let them get in that groove. So dare Justin Fields to beat you throwing the ball. Number 3, I think this is a Joey Bosa game. I am in big on Bosa this week. I loved how Bosa played against the Ravens. Yeah, he got sucked in on a couple of zone reads, but if you watch him throughout the 35 snaps he was on the field, I thought his pass rush looked really good. I loved how he got off the ball. I loved the physicality. I thought his rush moves were on point. He was close. I think he's going to take advantage of these young tackles and a quarterback in Justin Fields that gets sacked all the time, over 11% for his career. So, I mean, you can extend this to Greg Rousseau as well, but I'm feeling Bosa in this game. And I think he's going to be a big part of Buffalo's key defensively for being disruptive and getting those negative plays. So correct yourself. Dare Justin Fields to beat you throwing the ball. And Joey Bosa take over this game. I think he can. All right, coming up next, the Jets defense. What's going on there? What do the Bills need to do offensively to win this game? We'll break that down here next, folks. Be sure to stick with me. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet. Player props, spreads, over-unders, building a same-game parlay, or even the live betting, which is super fun. Just makes games more exciting. Whether you're watching the Bills, you're just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, it's easy, and it is the best way to add a little more energy to your Sunday. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place that first $5 bet. Welcome back, folks. If you would like additional content from me, I have it for you. I have a Substack, and it's called the Herd Mentality Substack. It's where I produce additional written and film content. And right now, as we are in season, 3 weekly posts. On Monday, you're going to get my all 22 review clips, which is me breaking down the biggest plays in the game with voiceover analysis on the all 22 film. You're going to get that sent right to your email. Middle of the week, you get Josh Allen Weekly, which is something I love doing this. I started this last year, where I collect on a weekly basis 76 different data points on Josh Allen. I compare where he slots compared to the other 32 starters, provide analysis and context. And we track it all season long so you can see these trends. And boy, it really put me in tune with what Josh was doing last year, and I'm excited to track all that again this year. And then on Friday, you get my scouting matchup primer, where you're going to get analysis from me on where I think each team has advantages and disadvantages. But my favorite part is the visual depth charts. I take both lineups, Bills offense against Jets defense, Jets offense against Bills defense, and I put every player in the lineup in a different classification based on how good of a player I think they are. And they all have different colors associated with it. So you can really look at these matchups head to head and see, where the matchup advantages are going to be. And it really kind of paints a picture for what to expect in the game. So check it out. You get that right now. You get my quarterly report cards, off-season content as well. If you want to check that out, that's at thejoemarino.com. Check out the Substack and learn more. Plus, it gets you into our Discord channel. Almost 2,000 people in there. It's a big organized group chat. We have so much fun all day long. So check out thejoemarino.com to be part of our Substack. The defensive coordinator for the Jets is Steve Wilks. He's 56 years old. He's been somewhere different each of the last 8 years. So let's do this. This year, he's the Jets defensive coordinator. Last year, he was out of football. 2023, the 49ers defensive coordinator. If you remember that, him and Kyle Shanahan got into it like during that elimination playoff game, and Steve Wilks was fired. Panthers defensive backs coach and interim head coach in 2023. Missouri Tigers defensive coordinator in 2021. The Browns DC in 2019. The Cardinals head coach in 2018. Panthers defensive coordinator in 2017. And prior to that, really where Wilks built his reputation was with Sean McDermott in Carolina, where he was Sean McDermott's defensive backs coach. So a lot of familiarity there. The Jets also have Eric Washington on their coaching staff defensively, who obviously has a ton of experience with Sean McDermott as well. So a lot of familiarity between the defensive coaches on both sides of this equation. The Jets last week gave up 34 points to the Steelers, third most of any team in the NFL. You know who was 1 and 2? The Ravens and the Bills, right? And then the Jets gave up 34 points. 22nd in EPA per play, 23rd in EPA per pass, 12th in EPA per rush. They gave up third down conversions on 40% of attempts. That's 13th in the league. They gave up a touchdown every time the Steelers got to the red zone, 100%, 3 for 3, dead last in the NFL. Aaron Glenn defenses are very, very cut and dry. I mean, we saw this for years with the Lions, and a lot of those elements carried over with the Jets. They run man coverage, they blitz. They ran 50% man coverage last week. That's the second highest percentage of any team in the NFL. and they blitz 38% of the time, sixth highest. You're getting man coverage, you're getting blitzes. You just know what to expect. And Aaron Glenn, like to a fault at times, is committed to that. Personnel-wise, at defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams, I think he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. Highly disruptive, really good pass rusher. Obviously, the Bills have played him a ton, but he's one of those special ones. He can wreck games. His running mate is Harrison Phillips. We know about him. They traded for him just before the season from Minnesota. He's a good nose tackle. They don't have much depth, though. Jay Tufele is the backup to Quinnen Williams. I think he's a replacement-level depth player. And Jawan Briggs, who had his moments in week 1 against Pittsburgh, but has been a quiet player so far in his NFL career. So I don't think they have a lot of depth to that defensive tackle room, and I don't think they have a lot of depth to their edge rusher situation. Jermaine Johnson is probably their best one. He's coming off of an Achilles. He played 50 out of 56 snaps last week. A good multifaceted player as a run defender and a pass rusher. His running mate is Will McDonald, the first-round pick of the Jets a few years ago. He was productive last year, and he was productive against the Steelers in week 1. He actually tagged Broderick Jones for a couple of sacks. And, he's not a guy that's going to be a firm anchor against the run. He's kind of long and lean, but he's quick, and, he knows how to get off contact, and he's got a lot of reach to him, a lot of influence that he can get to with his length. So good pass rusher. Opposite of Jermaine Johnson. Then it's Michael Clemens, who I think is a fine depth player. And that's about it. That's all they played. Tyler Barron played 7 snaps. So there's not a lot of depth to this defensive line. That's a big point that I want to make here. And we'll get into that with the keys, but I think their starters are good, but they don't have much depth. And I think you can stress that. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Their linebackers, they got a good pair of linebackers. Quincy Williams, Jamie Sherwood. I think they're both quality starters. And this is very much like the style of linebacker that the Bills have. Smaller players. I mean, Jamie Sherwood is a converted safety. Quincy Williams is like 5'11", 220, right? So small linebackers. So, but these guys are urgent. They fly around. I think they're good players. I think they're both quality starters. At cornerback, Sauce Gardner, of course, you know about him, one of the premier corners in the NFL. His running mate is Brandon Stevens. And I don't think much of Brandon Stevens. He gave up 2 touchdowns last week, to the surprise of nobody that's ever watched Brandon Stevens play. He's given up a passer rating against his coverage of over 104 for his career, and the Jets paid him handsomely to come over from Baltimore to be the starter opposite of Sauce Gardner. That's going to be a big opportunity to go after him. Their slot player is Michael Carter, who started his career pretty well, but I think he's been very up and down since then, but that's their slot player. At safety, they bring in Andre Sisco, a free agent signing. I like Andre Sisco. I think he's a good player. He's got good size. He's physical. And he's got really, really good ball skills. So you need to be aware of him. And his running mate is Tony Adams, who I think has really been slumping lately. I think he's kind of a low investment, wind up being like a serviceable starter. But I think the last couple of years he's dropped off, and I thought he had a bunch of struggles against Pittsburgh when watching that tape. So what are my keys for the Bills offense against this defense? Number one is you have to be aggressive. You got to go into this game with a mindset of that we're going to throw, we're going to get this lead, and we're going to put the Jets in a situation where they're going to get out of this run-happy approach that they want to have and make them chase the script and invite Justin Fields to a shootout with Josh Allen and see what happens. And that's what I'm getting at. So be aggressive. I think you got to get that lead, and I think you do that by throwing the football. They played the run pretty well against Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, I don't feel like there's a lot of parallels between Pittsburgh's run scheme. It's like exclusively zone, and they don't have any threat of running the ball with their quarterback. So you have a blended run scheme with one of the best rushing quarterbacks of all time with the Bills. So I think it's a very different situation. I don't think you can measure how the Jets' run defense looked against Pittsburgh and say that's how it'll be against the Bills, because I think they're completely different. But I think you throw to get this lead, and then you run to get the heck out of there with a 2-0 record. Number 2 is you attack Brandon Stevens. We've been through this. That's the guy. Go after him. He doesn't have ball skills. He gives up a lot of plays. Test him. And I'm curious to see what they do with Sauce, if they have him travel, and if so, is it on Keon? Is it on Josh Palmer? Whoever's up against Brandon Stevens throwing the ball should be a heavy pass game for the Bills, at least early on. And then I think number 3 is that you work tempo. I think there are times where you should You should be very deliberate with your pace, get up to the line, keep running plays, and stress this defensive line. Like, they don't have depth. I think they have 4 good starters, and that's it. And 1 good depth player in Clemens. Like, if you get them with their second string players on the field, run tempo and keep them on the field. But even when the starters are out there and they're not going to sub, right? They're going to play these guys a high percentage of snaps. Wear them down. And that way, if you're in a slugfest and it's the fourth quarter, you should have a Jets defense that's pretty worn down because there's just not a lot of depth. So number 1 is be aggressive, make this a drop back passing game for Justin Fields, attack Brandon Stevens, and work some tempo and stress the depth that doesn't exist with this Jets defense. Real quick on special teams, our kicker is Nick Folk. He's 40 years old. He turns 41 in November. He's been some team's kicker every year since 2007. He's been really good, though. 96% or better each of the last 2 seasons. In fact, 92% or better in 4 of the last 5 years. So, he's a good kicker. He's old. I think we might have the oldest kicker pair ever in this game between Matt Prater at 41 and Nick Folk at 40 and nearly 41 years old. Their punter is Austin McNamara, 2024 undrafted free agent. Last week against Pittsburgh was his first NFL game, so we don't really know much about how good this guy is. The returner situation is interesting. Xavier Gipson has been the returner. He had a bad fumble against Pittsburgh, and they cut him. They said, that'll be all. And the backup would be Kene Nwengu, who I think is a very good returner, but he's not practiced all week with a hamstring injury. I'm not sure he can go. So who's it going to be? Arian Smith was the next guy up against Pittsburgh. That's a rookie. He's really fast out of Georgia. We'll see if he's the answer. Is it Isaiah Davis? Is it Isaiah Williams? So I think they have a question mark there, but it won't be Xavier Gipson, who's had that job for a long time. And really, Xavier Gipson put himself on the map by beating the Bills, right? In that Josh Allen, reckless game in week 1 against the Jets on Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers' debut, he blows out his Achilles. The Bills wind up losing the game. Gibson's the guy that had the game-winning punt return in overtime, and he's lived off of that play for multiple years. He hasn't done much since. And now he's cut. And it's kind of funny to think maybe they should have kept Codrington, right? That was the thing. They had Gipson and Codrington. Codrington's, can be available. The Bills trade for him, and now they've cut Gipson. So I'm curious to see what they do in the return game, but it will not be an experienced player, whoever it is. So there you have it. The Bills' keys for beating the Jets. I think this is all about controlling the game script. You don't let them be in this game that they want to play, which is clock control, limit possessions, run the ball into oblivion. That's what they want to do. You got to get them out of it. The way that you get them out of it is sell out to stop the run, score a point, be aggressive throwing the football, get that lead. And again, dare Justin Fields, invite Justin Fields to a shootout with Josh Allen and see how it goes. All right, folks, we got one more conversation coming for you. On Saturday, we're going to do my final thoughts. We'll give you my game predictions and, of course, talk to banged up Bills about the injuries. And obviously, we've got a lot to learn about Ed Oliver and what's happening there. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.